It's Halloween! And you know what that means?
We watch horror movies?
I get to eat a candy?
We're gonna tell scary stories! But before I start, I want to remind everyone about our Super Horror Show calendar. It's a great way to keep it creepy year-round. The price is going up November 1st, so if you want, take a moment now and PayPal me your money. Now, tonight's scary stories come with an added twist.
Oh, no you don't. I told you, no crazy surprises tonight, and you agreed.
Yeah!
That I did, and I'm a man of my word. That's why the crazy thing will happen next week! So starting tonight, after the show is finished, there's gonna be a poll on our community tab. Go there and vote for the story that was your favorite. The winner gets to pick someone to trade places with as a joke in next week's episode.
So if I win, I could say you and I are going to trade places?
Sure can.
And I can sit behind the desk?
Of course.
For the whole episode?
Mm-hmm.
And I could say dumb things like, "Hey Super Horror Fam, look at me, I need attention."
Well, you're supposed to be impersonating me, so I guess that would.
Hey guys, so apparently this guy dressed as a Dalmatian robbed the bank 2 hours ago. But don't worry, police say he's spotted.
Okay! Let's have Roger start things off tonight.
First things first, guys. This story might not seem super creepy, but it is. Especially when you realize it's all true. So there was this horror babe that was super into me. Like, write my name in her notebook kind of into me. It was crazy. She was so into me, she totally would have kissed me. In fact, she did. Anyways, she was kind of pale, wore a lot of black, and was allergic to garlic or something. We started hanging out. It was really simple stuff. We'd meet somewhere at night, watch a movie, get some food, but eventually, she started saying we should meet indoors, like I should go to her house, or she should go to my house, you know, so we could be alone. Ow. I was really nervous, but she was cool. Actually, hanging out indoors was very similar to hanging out outdoors. We'd watch a movie, eat some popcorn, and sometimes even smooch. She was so into me. Anyways, one day, she gets this great idea. We should have a sleepover. Everything goes the same way it had been going for weeks, but this time, we had 3 scary movies. I knew there was no way I was going to stay awake through them all, so along with the popcorn, movie candy, and soda, I also laid out my sleeping bag and pillow to get comfortable. Here's where things became strange. It seems like the more tired I became, the more awake she became. I fell asleep at the start of the 3rd movie. Then, I must have heard a sound, or maybe the movie was too loud. I woke up during the movie, and she was on top of me, fangs out, eating me. I tried to fight her off, but I couldn't, and she ate me!
Roger, you said they killed you.
She did!
How can this story be real if you died?
I got better.
That was really something. You're up, Sammy.
Why? So you can tell your story last, hoping it sticks in everyone's mind so you win?
No! I did it the fairest way, alphabetically. Roger, Sammy, and then me, Valentine.
Cheater. This story is called The Old Barn. John was a middle child of 3. He was 13, his older brother Tom was 15, and his little sister Dana was 7. They lived in rural Pennsylvania and only had one neighbor, Mr. Allister. Mr. Allister was old and thin, so thin his eyes bulged a little and his clothes were always dirty. Once John's mom went to speak to Mr. Allister. She said he spoke in a strange whisper that forced her to get closer to him than she would have liked, and once she did, he took hold of her hand and brought her in even closer. From that moment on, Mr. Allister and his farm were off limits. John and his brother were creeped out by Mr. Allister and would dare each other to run through the small cornfield on his farm. Their parents told them to stay away and not bother Mr. Allister, but he was so old, he wouldn't be able to catch up to them even if he saw them. On the property was an old barn with a ton of locks on it. A well-secured barn isn't uncommon on a farm. Farm machinery is often very expensive and dangerous, but the boys had no idea and would make up stories about the creepy things that could be inside. One day while playing around Mr. Allister's farm, Tom noticed the barn was unlocked and called John over. The boys stopped and stared. They'd never seen the barn unlocked before, and the door was slightly open. Tom looks at John and says, "Do you dare me to go in?" John looks at Tom terrified and says, "No." Tom takes another look at the slightly open door and confidently says, "I'm going in." John begs him not to. It reminds him of all the things they said were in there. A monster, zombies, piles of dead bodies, victims of horrible medical procedures, with their arms where their legs go, and their legs where their arms were supposed to be. Tom tried to put his little brother at ease. Think about it, probably none of that is there, and this is just a creepy old barn. Or it's all there, and we need to tell someone. Tom's words made sense, but John was still terrified. Tom walks ahead and looks through the small opening. "No monsters. I'm going inside." John waited outside anxiously. Now we all know how time slows down when you're so scared you can barely move, but it really felt like Tom was in that barn for too long. It wasn't a huge barn. If he just wanted to look around, it should take less than 2 minutes to walk through and come out. John approached the barn and cautiously called his brother's name into the barn. "Tom?" There was no response. John was nearly scared to tears. He took a deep breath and started talking again. "Tom? Tom, if you're trying to scare me, you win. I've never been this scared before. I'll do anything you want. Just please come out." There was still no reply, but he did hear what sounded like walking. John backed away from the door in case Tom decided to jump out at him. He'd still be scared, but at least he wouldn't also be hit with a barn door. After a few minutes, nothing had happened. John's fear turned to worry and guilt. What if something happened to him? Maybe he hit his head on something, and the sounds he thought were footsteps were Tom trying to move. John opened the barn door enough to get his head inside. Tom, are you okay?" But there was no reply. He looked around quietly. The barn looked normal. There were a few goats and sheep in stalls. They were unnaturally quiet and still. There was no sign of Tom. John slowly walked into the barn. The animals quietly watched him. Then he looked down and noticed he's standing in a red circle on the ground. It looks like it was made of blood. John moves to get out of the circle, but he can't. A half hour later, Dana goes out looking for her brothers to tell them it's dinner time. Not seeing them in the yard, she walks down to Mr. Allister's. She sees Mr. Allister walking 2 goats out of the barn, then locking the many locks. "Mr. Allister?" she asks. "Have you seen my brothers?" Mr. Allister turns with a wide grin and his eyes solid black. "I'm sure they're around here somewhere."
Whoa.
I guess that leaves you, Val.
Alright everyone, this Halloween tale is one I've been saving for a while. Halloween is considered a magical night. Some believe the spirits of the dead come and walk among us. Witches cast their most powerful spells. And horror babes dress up in costumes.
Really?
Quiet, Sammy, you'll ruin my story. But what many people don't realize is the magic stretches far beyond those things and can sometimes make its way into places you wouldn't expect. Steve was an average teen. He'd make a little trouble here and there, see what he could get away with. But that's what being a teen is about, right? On Halloween a few years ago, Steve and his friends got a clever idea. They would dress up as scary as possible and try to get candy from kids that strayed too far off the main roads. They each picked a different part of town to prowl and would meet up behind the old church at midnight to see who got the most candy. Steve got the east side of town. It was pretty fun. He'd hide behind a bush or in a tree and wait for a group of kids to come by. When they'd walk past, he'd jump out at them, and while running away, a few of them would drop their bags. The only thing is, The kids were all pretty much back inside by 10 p.m. Steve and his friends hadn't considered that. And to make matters worse, cops were cruising around. Some parents probably reported Steve and his friends for scaring the kids. Steve hid in a tree and started sorting and counting his candy. If he could get all the candy into his bag and ditch the other trick-or-treat bags, he wouldn't have to hide from the cops anymore. He'd just be a regular trick-or-treater. Then he could go to the old church and just wait there. Halfway through the sorting, something strange happened. There was a paper bag mixed in with the others. Steve didn't remember picking up a paper bag. Even stranger, it felt empty. Even though it felt empty, Steve reached in his hand anyways. Every piece of candy counted. At the bottom of the bag, he could feel a strip of paper, like a fortune from a fortune cookie. He pulled it out and examined it. The paper read, "You better run. A squad car is going to turn onto Willow Street in 10 seconds. Don't get caught." Weird. Steve was on Willow Street. He looked up at the corner, which was a good distance away, and waited. He wasn't even sure what he was waiting for. Or maybe he was. He found himself quietly counting to 10. 5, 6, 7. Oh crap! A squad car pulled up to the crossing. Steve immediately dropped from the tree and ran behind a dark house. The squad car drove past, none the wiser. Relieved, Steve thought it would be a good idea to message his friends about what happened. But somewhere between dropping from the tree, dashing down the road, and ducking behind this house, he lost his cell phone. And even worse, the squad car pulled a U-turn down the block. Did the cops know he was there? Perhaps the occupants of the house were awake and told the cops there was a teen hiding on their property. Steve was scared, but then remembered the bag. He quickly reached in and felt another paper. This one said, "They're looking for you. Run towards 2nd Street. Hide behind the blue pickup truck. Count to 24, then run behind the gray house at the intersection of 2nd and Maple." Steve felt crazy, but being so scared, he did what the paper said. The cops saw him take off and started pursuing. They were right behind Steve, but he managed to get a little distance once he got onto 2nd and hid behind the blue pickup, just as he was told. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. It wasn't from the sprinting either. It was the cops pursuing him. He'd never been so scared before. Steve sat there and silently counted. Right when he started, he heard the 2 officers run up. They scanned the area and then took off looking for Steve. Once he hit 24, he ran as fast as he could to the gray house. Behind it there was a tree. Steve reached into the bag and pulled out another paper. This one simply said, "Climb the tree." So he did. When he reached the top, he again pulled a piece of paper from the bag. This one said, "You're safe. For now." You might think the word safe would make Steve feel good, but it didn't. Why didn't the note tell him how long he would be safe for? He reached in again and pulled out another paper. But it also read, "You're safe for now." Again and again and again, all the papers saying the same thing. Johnny's thoughts returned to his home. The bag was leading him in the opposite direction. Maybe I should... But before he could finish the thought, he felt a paper appear in the bag. He hadn't even noticed his hand was in the bag the entire time. This note said, "They're going to find you. Eat some candy and get ready to run. Run down Route 26 to the diner outside of town. Don't stop until you get there." Johnny was relieved and decided he would just leave one hand in the paper bag so he wouldn't miss any notes. He began eating candy and thinking about what the note said. That diner was only 15 minutes away by car, but running it could take an hour. He felt another paper. "The cops caught your friends. They're being brought to the station. They're going to pin this on you. Start running." Without another thought, Steve took off.
Whoa, what happened to him?
No one really knows. There are people that say they saw Steve for a few days after, but it wasn't really Steve. Steve was an average teen, fun-loving, careless and free. This person looked like Steve, but he wouldn't eat, sleep, or even use the bathroom without being told it was safe by a piece of paper found in a bag. It's reported he kept going farther and farther from home. His parents searched like crazy. I guess the bag was able to keep Steve safe from them too. Trick-or-treaters will occasionally see Steve on Halloween, walking further and further from home with one hand in a paper bag, the other hand being used to shovel candy into his face. The only question is he alive? Or is he a ghost wandering for eternity, taking directions from a paper bag that will never bring him home? Well, that's it for today's special Halloween episode. Don't forget to vote on your favorite story. Take good care of yourself, Super Horror fam, and we'll see you on Saturday.